I'll try. Hi.
A Mighty Blaze presents Friday Frontliner.
Oh my goodness.
I just love that. I just love that opening. It's fantastic.
I super love it. Hello, everybody. In case you had any doubt about where you were, you are at Friday Frontliner. I am Jenna Blum. I'm one of the co-founders of A Mighty Blaze, and I am here today with our Mighty Mystery on-air host and so many other things to so many people, Hank Phillippi Ryan. Welcome, Hank. Welcome to the hot seat.
I know it's odd to be on the other side of the microphone, I have to tell you.
I promise I will make it as easy on you as I possibly can. So before we get started talking about Hank and her new book, A Perfect Life, which is wonderful. If you haven't ordered at least 15 copies so far, you should do it right now. But before that, I'm just going to give a little intro of the Blaze. For those of you who are constant viewers, welcome back. We love you. A party is in the house because of you. Those of you who are new to the Blaze, please know that we are a team of 35 creative professional volunteers who are dedicated to linking writers with their readers in the age of COVID, in the age of Delta and beyond. Wherever you need to be linked to a writer, we are here for you. If you like what you see today, please give us a like or a follow on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok. We are ubiquitous. And please consider signing up for our newsletter at www.amightyblaze.com so you'll never have literary FOMO ever again. No more FOMO. Nobody likes that. So without further ado, I am going to read the bio for our amazing guest today, Hank Phillippi Ryan, who is one of my dear, dear friends who I text and send obnoxious bitmojis to all the time. But for those of you who would like a slightly more formal introduction, here it is. Ready, Hank?
I'm sitting
Buckle
up.
Okay, excellent. Hank Phillippi Ryan is the USA Today bestselling author of 13 thrillers, winning the most prestigious awards in the genre, 5 Agathas, 4 Anthonys, and the coveted Mary Higgins Clark Award. Hank is the only author to have won the Agatha in 4 different categories: Best First, Best Novel, Best Short Story, and Best Nonfiction. She also is the on-air investigative reporter for Boston's WHGH-TV with 37 Emmys. Like, I should get my gong to hit for that, because 37 Emmys and dozens more journalism honors. Her standalone 2019 bestseller, The Murder List, won the Anthony Award for Best Novel. Hank's 2020 novel, which some of you may remember was her first pandemic novel, actually, is, oh my God, where did it go? The First to Lie. Thank you. It's like, your bio is so impressive. I'm like, oh my God, the bio is like scrolling and scrolling. The Publisher's Weekly Review called it stellar. Today, we are here to celebrate Hank's 13th book, Our Perfect Life, which we love. Thank you for holding up the book and smiling your incandescent smile for us, which already has starred reviews from Kirkus and Publishers Weekly, which called it a superlative thriller. Hank is also a founder of the MWA University and the Backroom, First Chapter Fun with Hannah Mary McKinnon, who has the best accent ever, and the National Sisters in Crime past president. And as we all know, she is our on-air mystery host for A Mighty Blaze. And on her own pub day, she was here at 2 p.m. on Tuesday interviewing Lisa Jewell. On my own pub day, I would be like, don't talk to me, I'm getting a manicure. So Hank, you are so amazing. Thank you so much for giving us yet more of your time to talk about Her Perfect Life.
Oh my goodness, what could possibly be more fun? You know, on my bad writing days, when I sit here and think this is not going to work this time, I sit here and listen to that bio that you just read, and I thought, okay, well, sometimes it works, sometimes things work out. So it's very reassuring, especially on this crazy launch week, to sit here with dear friends and talk about my book and talk about your book and talk about Writing World and talk about just everything literary. A Mighty Blaze is just such a powerhouse and such a linchpin of our lives right now.
Thank you so much for saying that. I have to tell the audience that when I first called Hank to be our on-air mystery host, taking over from Sarah DeVello, whom we love and miss, but I was like, who am I going to get who has even a 14th of the charisma of Sarah DeVello? And I was like, Hank. So I called Hank while I was walking my dog, like literally in the middle of Commonwealth Avenue. I'm like, would you consider doing this? And when she said yes, I did this like CEO scream that deafened all the people around me. I was jumping up and down. It was not my most dignified moment, but it was just so exciting. Thank you for lending your supernova light to the blaze.
Oh.
It has made us shine so much more brightly now that you are here. We love your interviews. We just love you, Hank.
It's so funny because I want you all to think about that conversation that Jenna just described. Talk about a lesson in point of view. Think about it from my point of view. So the phone rings and it's, hi, it's Jenna Blum. And I'm like, oh, hi. Very, very exciting. And then she says something along the lines of, which all the intro, of course, I know the fabulous Sarah DeVello. Of course, I'm a fan of A Mighty Mystery. So then she essentially is saying to me, do you want to be part of A Mighty Blaze, this fabulous organization that is acclaimed internationally? Do you want to be part of this organization? And then every week, do you want to interview a fabulous mystery author whose books you would be reading anyway and who's probably a blockbuster favorite author? And I'm like, let me think about that. Yes, of course I do. So it's just a wonderful marriage of every possible wonderful thing, and to share it with all of you is just great. You mentioned on Pub Day the interview with Lisa Jewell. I mean, her book The Night She Disappeared is one of my favorite books of all time, and she is incredible. So what a gift on my Pub Day. You're like, oh, Hank, on her Pub Day she had to interview Lisa Jewell, and I thought, no, this is a treasure. This is the best thing that's ever happened. So I'm grateful all around.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. I think that one of the amazing things is that I've been trying to treat Hank for the whole, I think it's almost 2 months now that you have been with us as our on-air host. And I've been trying to treat her as a diva the whole time. Like, diva, you don't have to come to staff meeting. Like, diva, I'll bullet point you. She insists on doing all the things for all the people. You are the most generous person I've ever met. And, okay, I swear I'll break into the love fest in a moment and actually ask some questions. But after Hank's Pub Day, usually if you're an author and you pub, people send you flowers, congratulations on this thing you birthed out of your head. And instead, the morning after Hank's Pub Day, when I'm stumbling downstairs, like, bugs flying around my head, I find these beautiful flowers in the lobby of my apartment building, and they're from Hank, saying, thanks for being part of my launch. Like, who does this? Nobody except Hank. So thank you for being you. Tell us about so many questions to ask you, your launch, the book, etc. Please tell us about Her Perfect Life. For those of you who have not yet read it, I have been blessed with an advance copy, which I devoured. As I said, at Hank's lunch, I was pinned to the couch until I finished it. It has that sort of police hose force to it in terms of narrative. Tell us what it's about.
Well, it's a fast-paced, psychological, twisty cat and mouse thriller. And when it's really difficult, as you well know, to talk about the plot of a thriller because you don't want to give anything away. But there was a contest, a challenge on Twitter that said, can you describe your book in 5 words? So I thought, okay, what are the 5 words for Her Perfect Life? And I came up with sisters, betrayal, guilt, fame, and revenge. And that is sort of the essence of Her Perfect Life. All of those emotions that are so powerful in our lives, the bond with sisters, the power of guilt, the ugly emotion of revenge, all of those kinds of things that affect us so much. So bottom line, Her Perfect Life, there was a thing on Facebook, you can see how much I'm into social media, sadly, and should be writing. But there was a thing on Facebook that said, describe your book in 5 phrases. So I thought, okay. And I came up with a beloved reporter with a deep, dark secret, a missing college student, and that is not the secret, an anonymous source, a passionate clandestine weekend in Aspen, and a child's little pink suitcase that is surprisingly empty. So quickly, Her Perfect Life stars Lily Atwood, a beloved television reporter in Boston. Everybody knows Lily Atwood, and that may be her biggest problem because Lily has fame, she has fortune, she has Emmys, she's the single mother to a darling 7-year-old daughter, and she also has a deep, dark secret. And she begins to realize that it's impossible to keep a secret when you're always in the spotlight. And Lily begins to learn that the spotlight is the most dangerous place of all. So two powerful, smart women facing off in a high-stakes psychological cat and mouse game to prove their truth about a devastating childhood betrayal. But which woman is the cat? And which woman is the mouse? And that is the essence of Her Perfect Life. And I didn't give anything away, right?
No, you really didn't. And thank you. That's such a hat trick to be able to describe the basic plot of the book without undermining any of the twists and turns that are so necessary for the perfection of your craft, of your
Well,
thriller
it's
craft.
interesting because I know my readers are smart. And I
Mhm.
know my readers are trying to figure out along the way what the twists are and what will be the surprises. And so it's my job as a crime fiction author, as an author of psychological suspense, to misdirect you, to mislead you, to say, oh, look over here at this shiny thing, when really something else is going on, so that the results are shocking and twisty and surprising, but in the end, inevitable. The book ends the way it has to end, but you'll never guess that, even though I know you're all trying to do that.
Mhm. I might be your ideal reader because I'm always easily distracted by a shiny thing. Like I'm like a bird seeing something sparkling on a sidewalk and be like, bling, it bling, bling, bling. So that's one of the reasons I so loved reading this book. I have heard you say on other interviews that you don't plot your books, which to me is so fascinating because I don't know how you keep track of the twists and the turns without having a map on your wall to look at and say, now where am I? And oh, I forgot to link this thing up over here. How do you do that?
Well, that is a great question. Let me go back to the other thing before. I wanted to tell you that I know all the readers try to figure out the books, and it reminds me of when my husband and I watch a crime fiction show together, and I'll say, oh, it's the sister. Oh, she's pregnant. Oh, somebody's going to die in that lake. And Jonathan will say, can't you just watch it and not try to figure it out? And I say, no, I have to try to figure it out. But and that's the essence of outlining. That is the essence of why I, knock on wood, don't outline. And I think it began because I've been a television reporter for so long, 43 years. And when I'm working on a television story, I don't know the ending of it, right? I'm going out, I have an idea, a thought, a theory, a possibility, and I track down clues and follow leads and do interviews and go places and try to see what I can find out and develop the story as I go. And I don't know the end. And I have confidence as a reporter that I understand the structure of a story, beginning, middle, and end, a problem that needs to be solved, a character who you care about. In the end, you want some justice. You want the good guys to win. You want the bad guys to get what's coming to them. You want to change the world. So I have that template, that once upon a time template in my head. So when we talk about writing without an outline, that's funny and it sounds cool, but it isn't really true. There is the architectural structure of a story that I stick by. There is the tightrope of sitting down at this very computer and typing chapter 1 and having essentially no idea what's going to happen. And I don't. And I don't know. I just know I'm looking for the story, just as I do as an investigative reporter. I'm out looking for the story. And there's a certain naivete to it and a certain confidence to it that it's worked before and it'll work again. And I'll be able to solve the crime. And that's what I'm doing as a writer. I'm setting up a crime and then I have to solve it. And I have to tell you, of course, there are some days in writing without an outline, without a process, without a map that I think, have I just set up a crime that I can't solve? Maybe this is the time it's not going to work. And somehow the mystery thriller psychological process of my brain, combined with that I'm writing real characters who you care about, who have a goal, who want something. I say to myself, what would that person really do? What would Lily really do in this situation? What would Greer really do in this situation? What do they want and how far will they go to get it? And that advances the story. Every decision that my characters make lead them down one path, reveal their personality, reveal their goals, and then the story emerges. Does that make any sense?
Oh, so much sense. And I have so many questions I could ask about every sentence you just uttered. For those of you who haven't read Her Perfect Life yet, Greer is Lily Atwood's producer, and she plays a really big and interesting role in the book. So when I think about genre fiction, I think, oh, you must have to plot it because it's plot driven, but it sounds as though actually within that framework, that architecture for the crime, your books are very character driven. And in some senses, the characters are driving the car a little bit.
The character, well, that's two great thoughts. Yes, they're extremely character driven. The germ of the story is probably plot. Mm-hmm. But the thing that makes the story blossom into reality, into a real story about real people, is that the characters want something. They need something, for better or for worse. And that's the thing. There's a quote in the book that's something like, admiration is such a sister to envy. So think about that. You say to someone, oh, congratulations, that was wonderful. We did this together. And then you think, I wonder why she always, we're talking about Greer, the producer, and Lily, the reporter. So Greer, who is one of the characters who drives the story, she admires Lily. She works with Lily. She helps Lily, the investigative reporter. But at some point, she begins to think, why does Lily get all the credit? So first it's, congratulations, Lily, we did this. And second, why is Lily getting all the credit? And third, sort of, I should be getting all the credit. I did part of this, and then I want it. And you see how those incremental decisions, and this is what we're talking about with character development, the incremental decisions about how each of our brains work. That's what drives the story. My books don't have graphic sex. They don't have graphic violence. They don't have inappropriate language, but they have gaslighting. They have mind games. They have that twisty, turny manipulation, the psychological power that we have over each other, what we do. How destructive is it, what we do to each other to get what we want? And that's what drives a book like Her Perfect Life, is desire and passion. And as I said, guilt and betrayal and revenge.
I love it. And all of these things are also so much part of life, all that emotional manipulation. All of my blazers will tell you I use it on them every single day with all of my emojis. It's very, very, very helpful. So Greer is an interesting character to me too. And again, without giving too much away, she's like the classic unreliable narrator. She's a first person narrator, and she thinks she's thinking one way, but the reader can see between the lines of her own narration to us that she really is thinking something else or being driven by something else. There's a sort of delicious Dorothy Parker-esque kind of quality to her narration. Can you talk about maybe which character came more easily to you, Greer or Lily, who is third person?
Well, the decision about third person and first person was kind of interesting, because Greer, the voice of Greer, the first person voice of Greer, just as you exactly said, just came out. It was kind of amazing. That I think her first line is, would I like to be Lily Atwood? And that lets you know right there that there is something going on, that there is a conflict going on in Greer's mind. Greer is a smart, competent, successful, ambitious television producer. That's a very powerful role in television, because they're behind the scenes. They're not on the air. And that's a decision that a producer will have to make. It takes a very special person to say, I'm going to do half of the work, but I'm going to get essentially none of the credit. That's a personality that is very, very complex and very complicated and very interesting, psychologically very interesting. And that's why it's so dangerous, because if someone decides, wait a minute, this isn't fair that I'm helping this other person be famous. On the other hand, Greer and her partner, Lily Atwood, the reporter who she works with, who she was assigned to. Remember, a producer and a reporter don't choose to work together. They're assigned.
Oh, interesting. I did not know that, actually. I thought that maybe there was a little bit of symbiosis there, that the on-air producer is the producer.
Well, there is symbiosis in that one success is tied to the other, but you don't get to choose your partner. So you dance with the one who's assigned to you, knowing that if either of you fail, you both fail. So
oh my gosh, I had no idea. Oh my goodness. So one of the questions that I had about the book is, an obnoxious reader question, because I do this with every book, and I think it's something a lot of readers do. We all want to know how much of this is real life and how much of it is Hank, and how much of your experience has gotten into Her Perfect Life and how much of it is invented. And one of the scenes for me early on, I mean, obviously producer, on-air talent, working together, schedule in the newsroom, how you go about investigating a story or talking to a source. I'm like, perhaps that is based on Hank's experience, maybe. But there's a scene in the beginning, not giving much away, that Lily accepts an Emmy, and she's at the Emmy award ceremony. And I devoured that especially greedily, because I thought, many of us maybe know what it's like to work in news. We have journalism backgrounds, or work for a paper or a TV station or radio station. But Emmys, though, like, I have never been to the Emmys, sadly. Like, so can you tell us what maybe the proportion is of your own experience in Her Perfect Life? What is fiction? And then what is it like to win an Emmy? And what did you wear? I just broke a rule by asking you like 4 questions at once, but dying to know all these things.
I'm keeping them on track in my head, I hope.
I will remind you. I'll remind you.
Couple of things about that. One, I've been a television reporter for 43 years. I've wired myself with hidden cameras. I've gone undercover and in disguise and confronted corrupt politicians and chased down criminals. So I've been in SWAT team events and murder scenes and trials and hurricanes and ice storms, and interviewed everyone from Klaus von Bülow to Prince Charles, all those kinds of things. So it would be silly for me not to take all of that information, all of that authenticity, and put it into the books. Of course, that's in there. My books are not my television stories made into fiction in any way. It's just that experience informs the book. The other part of the book that's important, as there's the reporter part, and then there's who wants to see Hank in disguise, a mighty place to say, I can tell you how, I can tell you how I do it, but then it wouldn't be a disguise anymore, right? I might be in disguise right now.
Is there a nose and glasses involved? Like,
no
mustache? Okay. No mustache. Okay.
I could try that, but I don't think that'd be much of a disguise. We'll discuss it. Okay. There's also the result of those stories. Because for all the good my stories have done, I've worked with the same producer for 18 years. Mary Schwager is this amazing partner and team player and lovely in every way. But think about how much for all those years I sat in that office, sharing an office with Mary, and we know everything about each other. But it's a professional relationship, and that's a thing. That line between a professional relationship and a friendship is something that's really an interesting juggle. There's also, though, if you think about those Emmys, and here, I'll show you.
Oh my God, you guys, look, it's all of Hank's Emmys.
All right, so I'm putting this down again now. Anyway, only for you, Jenna.
Thank you. Oh my God, I was going to ask. Show us your Emmys. Show us your Emmys.
If I turn the camera another way, though, anyway, for every one of those Emmys, for all the good that we've done, changed laws and changed lives and gotten millions of dollars in refunds and restitution for people. We've gotten people's homes out of foreclosure. And it's really so inspiring to see that we have the power to change the world a little bit. But think about that. Every one of those Emmys, just like Lily's Emmys, means that I told someone's secret that they didn't want me to tell. And every one of those Emmys represents someone who doesn't like me anymore and who would not like to see me walking toward them, would not like to have me call them, and is probably enraged over what I did. Betrayal and revenge doesn't come just from people who you know. And as a television reporter, as an investigative reporter, you're putting yourself out there to juggle, it's first, do no harm, but second, help people, reveal schemes, reveal nefarious situations, reveal when someone is doing something that they shouldn't do. All that is very important. But I had a news director once who told me that a good investigative reporter comes to town and works until everyone hates them. So, right. And so think about that. And luckily Massachusetts is big, so I have plenty of time. So think about that. I've had people threaten me and stalk me and call me and file lawsuits against me and scream at me and follow me home and all those kinds of things because I put myself in the spotlight, just like Lily does. Orders of magnitude. Lily is orders of magnitude more celebrated, and she's a much bigger star. But still, the situation is similar in that there is this spotlight. And I learned this so long ago when I was starting out in television in Indianapolis so many years ago. And I went to the laundromat. That's how glamorous my life it was. If you want glamour, I went to the laundromat and someone came up to me and said, "Aren't you Hank from Channel 13?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, nice to see you." And she says, "Oh, let me tell you about my life and let me tell you what I need you to do." And I thought, okay, because I'm asking people to tell me stories. I'm asking people to give me story ideas. We go on TV and say, "Call me." So here she was doing that, but in the laundromat. But okay. And I went home and I called my mom. This was so early on. This was 40 years ago in my career. Called my mom and I said, "Can you believe it, Mom? Somebody came up to me in the laundromat and is telling me stories about themselves." And my mom paused for a second. And then she said, "Sweetheart, you chose the spotlight. Welcome to the spotlight. And I don't ever want to hear you complain about that again." And that really was a life lesson to me. And I have taken that to heart. But that spotlight is really the essence of where her perfect life came from. I can tell you very quickly one fast story about the spotlight and about the danger of the spotlight. Yes, of course, there's the glittering Emmys, and that's all wonderful. But the other side of that, I was the anchor of the weekend news in Atlanta for years. And one Saturday night, I had finished anchoring the 11 o'clock news, and I drove home, and it was after midnight in Atlanta. I turned down my little street, Park Street in Atlanta, and there were blue lights and police all over the street. And I thought, oh my golly, a crime scene. I've been to enough crime scenes. I recognize this. And as I got closer, I realized that the crime scene was my house. Yeah. And I parked the car as fast as I could, leaped out of the car, slammed the door, ran to the police officer, said, "I'm Hank Phillippi." And he says, "I know who you are." And I said, "Oh, well, that's my house." And he said, "Yeah, I know." And I said, "Well, what happened?" And he said, "We caught someone breaking into your house." That's him and the cruiser over there. And he told us he broke into your house because he knew you were live on television. And so he knew you weren't home. He knew where I was, so he knew where I wasn't. And that was just so chilling to me, so disturbing, and revealed to me how vulnerable we as reporters are, that people can know where we are and know what we're doing and know where we're going. I'm on a live shot in front of, some sort of situation. You can turn on your TV and see that's where I am. That's where I am. And that vulnerability, that danger of the spotlight is really the essence of her perfect life, because Lily has a secret and she needs to keep it. And how is she supposed to do that when everywhere she goes, people know who she is? Everywhere she goes, people talk to her. Everywhere she goes, people think they know her. And a lot of people don't like her. And nobody tells a secret without a reason. And that's the essence of her perfect life.
So good. And what an origin story that is. And so terrifying. I think it's something that a lot of us don't think about. I certainly don't. I think, oh, I like fame. I would like to be super famous, like make me even more famous. And then you don't think about the fact that you give away privacy. You give away a certain amount of being able to sleep securely at night because people know who you are. They know where you are. Do you think there's been...
Let me just say, exactly. And even more than that, Lily chose the spotlight, but her 7-year-old daughter did not. And so when Lily chooses to do something that she can handle for herself, but what happens to her daughter? And I think that even anyone, any mom, any parent can relate to how your professional life might affect your children and how far you'd go to protect them and how much the danger meter peaks into the red when someone recognizes your daughter at the grocery store and wants to know about your daughter at the grocery store. There's a scene in the book that I particularly love when someone comes up to Lily in the produce department and says, "Can we take a selfie, with you and your little daughter?" And Lily's like, "No, no." And she sort of scoots little Rowan behind her. And this woman who has been so effusive and friendly says, "Oh, you television people, you think you're too good." And Lily has to juggle, how do I keep my viewers liking me and protect my daughter at the same time. So yeah, we all want to be famous. It would be great to be so famous, we think. But what I was trying to carefully do was reveal the dark side of that spotlight. What's the possibility of what's going on that is sinister and ugly, and not just for you, but for your family. So the book is not only about Lily and her missing sister, but it's about Lily and her daughter. And that means it's about family and relationships and how far we go to protect our family and what those relationships mean.
So fascinating, because even if you're willing to assume the risks, as your mom said, like you chose this bed, now you get to lie in your public bed, but the families can be collateral damage. I have questions about this that I'm going to pop up, and we have reader questions. And readers, if you want to be eligible to read, to win a personalized copy of Her Perfect Life and some swag, you have to do this by putting your question in the chat, and we will throw a dart at the end of the chat and pick one of y'all. But I'm wondering, just on a personal note, do you have this sort of bleed into your own life? I know you have a husband who may not be as much of an Emmy grabbing podium, behind the podium dude as you. What kind of inroads does this sort of necessary reserve make in your own life? I have to work with this waterline all the time. I want readers to feel they have some access into my behind the scenes life, but I've also had stalkers, and I'm sure you've had many more stalkers because you're an on-air personality. So how does that work for you? Is there a sort of a wall that you then have to break through with people you love?
After all these years that you sort of learn how to deal with it. I embrace my readers, and I feel that I really know them, and I am their friends. It's and usually it's just fine. It's a question of learning this balance of what, as my mom used to say, if it makes your stomach hurt, don't do it. And that, mom was right about that. So my husband is a criminal defense attorney, and he has had some notorious and wonderful cases. He's the best guy. He's a criminal defense and civil rights attorney, the best guy, the most benevolent guy in the world. But he's also, he also deals with some people who one might think are scary. And so we both have these worlds where we're surrounded by, and here's somebody calling us.
It's a stalker. It's somebody who loves you, who got through.
Or we'll see. Forgive me about that. I hope Jonathan will get that. We have these worlds that have a lot of moving parts to them. So I open my arms to people. I embrace people. People are good. Basically, they are. And that's sort of how I look at the world. I just try to be careful. I mean, it's so silly, back in the before times, if I would go into the mall, for instance, remember malls, I would actively put a pleasant expression on my face. So people would think, oh, she seems nice, because there is this veneer that you need to keep. I sort of think about, is my hair combed when I go places? Because there is this public Hank that has to be out there. And that's fine. It's just part of the deal. I completely embrace it. So I had an old executive producer once who just said, all you have to do is never accept a favor, never take anything free, not even a cup of coffee, and always check your facts. So that's sort of how I have lived.
That's so interesting. And also you have the additional bonus of always looking perfect. It may be that I am in your bushes with the binoculars looking to see if there ever is a hair out of place. So that is a risk that you assume working with me. But I'm like, how does she even do this? It also is a guarantee that if I go out of the house without makeup on and I'm in my grubs and walking the dog or whatever, I will run into a reader. Always. 100%. Doesn't matter, we're not in Indiana, and it would happen.
That is the immutable law of the universe. No question about that. That's going to happen. And people will say, I'll tell you the funniest story about it. I will. So I was having a writing day, And I was sitting here at this very computer in this very office with my hair up on top of my head and glasses and no makeup, sweatpants and my little t-shirt. And the doorbell rings. And so I go up to the door and I open the door and the guy says, FedEx for Hank Phillippi Ryan. And I said, I'm Hank Phillippi Ryan. And he goes, no, you're not.
No.
So that's the way it goes sometimes.
Right. Go get your boss. I'll wait. Right. Yes. My first, when my first book was published, I was at a Borders, remember Borders on School Street in Boston. And I found the book on the front table a couple days before pub. And I was so excited that I picked up my hardcover and bought it to the reception area at Borders. And I said, this is my book. This is my book. And the Borders employee opened it to the author photo and she said, no, it's not. Because I was looking like my normal face and not my author face. And I love the discussion of the public and the private face, because that's really what Her Perfect Life is all about, and what happens when people are determined to get past the public face to the private face. I'm going to throw up one question and then let our producers do it. But I think this is so organic to this part of the discussion that Carla wants to know, have you ever had people stalk you in public, which is a great question. And what do you do about that?
Yes, because here's the situation. I work before times, I work in a building that has a front door and a back door. So there are only two ways out of the building. And so all someone has to do is wait for me in the lobby or wait for me outside the lobby. I mean, we have a guard who doesn't let people get past the reception desk, but you can come into the reception desk. And if you don't go into the reception desk, you're outside on the sidewalk, and people will, I'll walk out of the building and people just follow me, and people just are asking me questions, and it may be, and this is the balance, it may be that they're going to tell me about the next Watergate. So I want to hear that. They might have a good story. My reporter brain is always wondering, well, is this the one? Is this the one? Is this my next big story? So I'm definitely open to that. But there are people who have followed me out of the building, and then who send me letters, then who send me pictures, then who ask for favors, or who send me letters then at home, or over and over and over, or repeated phone calls. There's all different kinds of stalking, and every single kind of stalking is terrifying. And so you just have to stop, you just have to set out the boundaries, and you say, please leave a message on my phone at work. Here's my card. You can call me when I'm in the office. You're going to be congenial about it, but professional about it. And there's a way that there's a boundary between you're a person and you're a human being, and you're my friend. So you're not my friend, but I'm happy to chat with you in a professional, proper way. So yeah, it's scary. It's always scary. You never know who's around the next corner. If I'm in a live shot, you never know who may pop up because they know where I am. And that's just a juggle that every single reporter has to deal with every single day of their lives.
Did you ever have, I'm sorry, okay, this is the last question I'm going to ask, and then I will ask our producers to pop up audience questions, which are numerous and fantastic, and we can do maybe a lightning round of them. Did you ever have a moment when you were legitimately scared, like genuinely scared, maybe on air, just by somebody who surprised you?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting the asking about being scared. One of the scariest moments, and I'm sure I've had many more. One of the scariest moments was when I was doing a story about that fish sellers, fish distributors were saying that fish was a certain kind of fish when it wasn't really a certain kind of fish. It doesn't really sound like it matters that much, but it really does. And we can go into that someday. So I was invited into an office of a person who was doing this, to do this sort of contentious interview, a confrontational interview. And he knew it was going to be a confrontational interview, but that's what I do. So my photographer and I walked into this office, and there he is. And there are like two kind of not very pleasant looking guys flanking him. And then someone had opened the door for us and let us in. And then they closed the door to the office, and then they stood in front of the door. So I just thought, okay, this is not that good. And it was very intimidating. The other time I was undercover in a cult church, and it was back in the old days where hidden cameras were much bigger. And so I had a purse where I had cut a hole in the side of the purse. and stuck the handy cam in the purse, and hit record, stuck the handy cam in the purse, stuck the lens through the hole in the purse in the shoulder bag, and then I tied a scarf over the strap of the shoulder bag and put the tails of the scarf over the camera lens. So I would have to move the scarf to be shooting, and then I'd put the scarf over the lens really, really fast if I wasn't shooting, if I thought I was going to get caught. So you could gauge how terrified I was by how many pictures of my hand and the scarf you had over the lens, if you see what I mean. So I'm in this cult church, and I'm sort of shooting and not shooting and shooting and not shooting and trying to look like I might be vulnerable to be brainwashed by this church. But I don't want to be brainwashed. I don't want to look too vulnerable, because I don't know what brainwashing is and how do you even do that. And I wasn't going to drink the lemonade. So a person came up to me at one point, tapped me on the shoulder, and says, "What's that in your purse?"
Oh my God.
And so I thought, oh my dear, this is not good. Now, what I was doing was not illegal. In Massachusetts, you can use a hidden camera as long as it doesn't have audio. So I didn't have audio, so it wasn't illegal, but it was like not fun. This person would rather have not had me be there doing this. So I thought, what am I going to do? So I stood up really tall and I said, "You are making me very uncomfortable. Am I going to have to call security?" And I'm thinking, I don't even know who security is. And maybe this guy is security. I don't know. I'm just going to try this. And he just backed off. And said, "Oh, I'm sorry." And I just skedaddled out of there. And that was the end of that story. But my photographer was waiting for me in the car, and I'm like, go, 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 go. Let's get out of here. And finally, there was one other time. I mean, the lucky part is that as a reporter, a television reporter, I almost always have a photographer with me, because if video, it's not a story for television. So I was doing this story about a wedding photographer. This is so silly. A wedding photographer who was taking videos of people's weddings and then holding them hostage until the bride paid more, which is so sad and so awful. I know, isn't that? It's heartbreaking. It's not the end of the world, but for a bride who's paid for a wedding photographer then holds her video hostage is terrible. So we found out where this person was going to be. He wouldn't answer any phone calls, not any emails, not anything, wouldn't respond at all. So when you do that, when that happens, to get a response, the only way to do it is just to go see if they'll talk to you. So we found out where he was going to be. He was on the first floor of a building. And so I said to my photographer, "One of you come with me into the lobby." And I got another photographer to be outside just in case something happened. So the guy starts coming down the stairs, and I say to my photographer, "That's him, start rolling." And the guy comes down the stairs, sees me, and just pushed me down, and then ran out of the place. And so, I always, so I said to my photographer, I got up and I said to my photographer, "Did you get that? Did you get that on video?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I got that. And the outside photographer said, "Oh yeah, I got that." And so we microwaved it back to the station. And about 10 minutes later, I heard from the news director saying, "We got your video. We're going to put that on. We're going to put that on as a promotion right away. And we're going to use what you said when he pushed you." And I said, I didn't say anything. And my news director says, "Oh yeah, you did." And I thought, well, I better hear it. Tell me what I said, because I don't remember saying anything, and I'm not sure that can go on the air. And it turned out that I had said, and my mom would be so proud, "Please, sir, don't push me." And so that is a couple of lessons, because one, I say to my photographers, you were asking about danger. I say to my photographers, if it looks like somebody's going to haul off and punch me, just make sure you're rolling, because we need to get the shot. That's all that really matters about this. And the other thing is that's why my characters, I don't really use inappropriate language that you can't use on the air. Neither do my reporter characters, and I get teased a lot about that. But if the synapse in your brain jumps to say something that you're not allowed to say on TV, then when the wedding photographer pushes you down, those are the words that are going to come out. And what came out of me after all these years of not saying anything inappropriate was, please, sir, don't push me. And so there is as I said, my mom would be so proud of me.
I am proud of you. That's amazing, because I'm sure I would have dropped some F-bombs on that dude, because I'm from New Jersey and just swear like a sailor. Anyway, it's such an incredible lesson in true reportage, like true professional cojones and like ovaries of steel, and just like what it takes to be a really a star reporter, to say, if somebody's going to punch me in the face, just get it on camera. That, I think, is the essence of what a good journalist is. And I grew up in a journalist family, so I think that's absolutely true. Like, you just want to bust them on camera. Thank you for sharing these unbelievable stories with us. They're so amazing. Also, in the cult church, I would have said, this purse is full of feminine products.
Oh, I like that. I will use that. Would you like to see?
But then he probably would have like knocked me down, and then I would have had to get it on.
No,
camera.
That's a good answer. That is a very good answer.
That's my go-to for any guy who's like, what's in that purse, lady? I'm like, oh, it maxi pads. Would you like to see? I can open it up for you. Anyway, on that fabulous note, I would love to.
Jenna, only you.
I mean, this is why you are the reporter, and I'm basically on like Bargain Basement E. Like, this is my life. So on that note, I would love to hear some of the audience questions, because they're so terrific. Let's do a lightning round, guys. We have only like 5 minutes left. Sylvia wants to know, Hank, have you ever walked away from a news story? Is that permitted in the newsroom? Great question, Sylvia.
No. I don't even know. I mean, it's interesting, Sylvia. I love you, and I'm so glad you're here today. I don't think that would ever happen. I've not done stories that I've investigated because they didn't turn out to be a story or not big enough. But I haven't. I was the person who announced the marathon bombing live in the newsroom. When I got a call from my news director, really quickly got a call from my news director, and they said, "Can you come down and maybe do some breaking news?" And I said, "Sure. What happened?" And my news director said, "Yeah, we're not sure. Just kind of stand by." So I put on, my earpiece and tried to put on some lipstick. And about 5 seconds later, she calls and says, "Get down here right now. Get down here right now." And I ran down the 2 flights of steps to the newsroom. I plugged into the producer's intercom. They slapped a microphone on my lapel, and they said, "There's been a bombing at the Boston Marathon, and you're on in 5, 4. And I'm like, "Okay, but what happened? What happened? You have to tell me what happened." And they said, we don't know. Just talk about the marathon. You've covered the marathon. You've been at the finish line. Just talk about it. Just go." And when you talk about, I was terrified at that moment. I mean, I remember so clearly my knees were weak, and I thought, I am not going to be able to do this. This is and then I thought, Hank, no, you are a storyteller. You are a storyteller. Just tell the story of what's happening now. And I remember having this sort of feeling of peace and calm. It's like, I'm a professional. I'm a journalist. I can do this. And as the information came in, they would hand me pieces of paper with just things scrawled on it. And I talked and talked until we got all of our reporters out in the scene, and the real anchor people came in. But that's the kind of thing that's scary, because, hundreds of thousands of people were going to listen to me and believe what I said. And it was my responsibility, even in this crazy, chaotic, unknowable situation, to look like I was confident and know what I was doing. And that's the juggle as a reporter.
I am having a really strong reaction to this story. You and I have talked about this a little bit behind the scenes, but Priya said, I'm having goosebumps and tears. And I'm having like this very teary reaction to this, because I think, on the one hand, as a journalist, this is what you do, right? So I have that sort of widget in my mind too. Like, something bad happens, you go on camera, you make sense of it for others. But to hear you tell it, it strikes me that it is so heroic to be able to shove aside your own emotion in that moment and go on camera to help people who are devastated and confused make sense of that moment by turning it into a narrative for us. Like, that is really a heroic act. So thank you for sharing that moment with us. It's a really big deal. Every time you tell that story, I'm like, oh my God, I just feel privileged to even hear the story. So thank you for that. We have time for like maybe one more.
I'm seeing so many wonderful people. Priya and Carla and Sharon and Anissa. I love seeing you all here. Thank you. Susan, and this is so Mindy. Oh my God, I love it. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Anissa, our party girl who brings the party to the house for every interview, wants to know who was the toughest character in Her Perfect Life to write and why? Great question.
Oh my goodness. Yes, it is a good question, Anissa. And I'll tell you who the toughest character was, Sam Prescott. And I don't think I can tell you anything more than that, because as Jenna was saying, when we started, and I don't use an outline, so I don't know at the beginning of a book whether somebody is good or bad. I just don't know. I don't know whether they're going to be a character we wind up loving or a character who winds up being the bad guy. And Sam was the person I did not know whether he would wind up being good or bad. And there was a moment in the book when it all came clear to me. And it had to do more with Lily than Sam. Now you're all saying, what is she talking about? So read the book to find out. But in answer to your question, dear Anissa, it was Sam Prescott that was the hardest character to write and the hardest character to name. His name didn't emerge until very late in the book, about the same time that I figured out who he was.
Amazing. Yes. And if you want to know what Hank is talking about, you got to buy the book, as they say. So we have a question from Bob, and then I'm going to let you go, Hank, onto your day, because I know you have a million other interviews to do. But Bob wants to know, Hank, what would you say? This is such an interesting question. What would you say is the most important investigation you've done that has brought about the biggest change for good?
Oh, thank you, Bob. What a good question. Two really quickly, if I have time, Jenna.
Yes, please.
One is we did a big investigation of the home improvement contractor and mortgage and banking industry in Boston, essentially a redlining story. And as a result of that story, 3 new laws were passed in Massachusetts to prohibit the kinds of actions that we had uncovered. And I got people's homes out of foreclosure. The bank actually had to give people their homes back as a result of this story. And it's really quite amazing to, drive by those people's homes and say, the Smiths lived there, they lived there, and they live there still. The Joneses lived there, and they live there still because of this story that we worked on. We also found out that thousands of times in Massachusetts every year, this was several years ago, emergency responders, police and firefighters responding to 911 calls were going to the wrong addresses. Thousands of times a year. So you call for the fire department and they go somewhere else. We asked for the documentation of those mistakes. They're called discrepancy reports. And the state refused to hand them over to us. And they said, these discrepancy reports were not public records. Now, let me say that this is the State Emergency Telecommunications Board. So I'm like on the computer saying, yes, these are public records. Yes, of course they're public records. You have to give them to us. Finally, they gave them to us. They sent me a cardboard box of documents that looked like someone had taken 6,000, it was 6,000, I think, separate sheets of paper and swooped them off their desk into a cardboard box. Then they're like, here, sister, you wanted those reports. Here they are. And so I spent the weekend sorting those reports, city and town by city and town, on my living room rug, 351 different piles for every city and town in Massachusetts. And at the end of Sunday, I knew which cities and towns had the most 911 errors. I was the only person who did. I had sorted so many documents that I had so many paper cuts that my hands were bleeding and there was blood on the documents. And so now my producer and I say, when there's blood on the documents, there's a good story. So long story short, too late for that. The system got changed. The head of that board got removed, and the system doesn't work the way it did anymore. So we did do good with fixing the 911 system in Massachusetts, even though I had paper cuts all over my hands.
That is absolutely incredible, Hank. Thank you so much. My editor calls me the hardest working woman in showbiz. That is not true. It's you. And the work that you do actually changes people's lives so much for the better with your investigative reporting, with your writing. Guys, please buy Her Perfect Life. It's out now. It dropped on Tuesday. You will love it. Hank will sign it for you. I know we're going to announce our giveaway winner on the screen. But meanwhile, guys, don't forget to buy at least 5 or 6 copies of this for everybody you know who is interested in fame, who's interested in TV, who's interested in journalism, and who's just interested in a really good read. Hank, thank you so much for spending part of your valuable afternoon with us.
Oh my goodness, Jenna, you're a treasure. Anyone who has a sister or has a daughter or who cares about their family, This is about fame and family. And I really hope you love Her Perfect Life. And Jenna, you are perfect. You are an absolute treasure. And I couldn't be happier to be with you all here today and every day. I'm incredibly grateful. Thank you so much.
We love you, Hank. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned because Lit Chick is up next, and it is lit today. Thanks, you guys. Have a terrific Friday. Bye.